We are live. Welcome to Missouri Tigers Live. I'm Zach Armilius, as I always am here every week, talking about Mizzou football. As we're going to do this while we watch the Mizzou basketball game. I'm not going to be live all night. Not going to eat dinner still, but yeah. So Missouri Tigers Live. My name's Zach Armilius. I'm here. This is episode 54. Holy cow, we've been doing this for a long time. Over a year now. Over a year's weeks of episodes. So let's get into it. A lot to talk about tonight, and I can't be here all night. So the biggest news, of course, is Mizzou has an offensive coordinator. They hired Chip Lindsey from the University of Michigan. It looks really good on a resume that you hired away Michigan's offensive coordinator. He was probably getting let go anyway, if I'm being perfectly honest. So, but it looks good. Chip comes from the Malzahn tree. I finally got a mouse for this thing, so we're going to be moving a little bit. His history, he was a high school coach for a long time down in Alabama, and then at the turn of the decade, 2010, he became the quarterback's coach at Troy. He went back down to high school and then became an offensive assistant at Auburn, and his career kind of took off. He followed Todd Monken to Southern Miss in 2014. Had a couple nice years there at Ole Miss under at Southern Miss with Todd Monken, who's now, of course, with the Ravens. Where did Todd go after 26? Oh, he became the Buccaneers. Yeah, fair enough. After that, Chip went to Arizona State, was an offensive coordinator there. It was not pretty, but they did average 33 points a game, and they're 11th in the nation in red zone offense. And then he went to Auburn. He joined Gus Malzahn's staff. In 2017, Auburn, that was a really good football team. That team did beat Georgia in the regular season. They beat Alabama at the end of the season, and then they played to the SEC championship game and lost to Georgia. Chip, he's been around the block after leaving Auburn. He went to Troy, and he was the head coach at Troy. Did not go too well. He's like the only coach in the history of Troy football that did not finish with a winning season ever. 5-7, 5-6, 5-6. Not the end of the world. Look, some guys are meant to be coordinators, not head coaches. After that, Chip went to UCF. He was hired again by Gus. He was hired to be the quarterback's coach and OC. He did not call plays. He spent one season in Orlando. They competed for the AAC championship. They finished 11th in yards per game, 8th in rushing. And then following that, he went to North Carolina. Drake May says he was a big part of his development there in Chapel Hill. And that's probably game. He won 8 games. They helped Drake May finish the number 3 overall pick, but that wasn't a great season for North Carolina. And then he finally ends up at Michigan, hired by Sharon Moore. Got the Michigan job. Just not overall always. It's a really up and down tenure for Chip. Since he became an offensive coordinator again. So if you look at the offenses articles from Power Mizzou, I brought it up just because it's a good way to put numbers. Again, we're talking about Chip Lindsey, hired as the offensive coordinator at Missouri. At 2022 at UCF, look, that was a really nice offense led by John Reese Plumlee. If you compare them to the 2022 Mizzou offense, it blows them out of the water. Passing yards, rushing yards, points per game. It was a really well-constructed offense. But in the 3 games against power conference teams that year, UCF only did average 18 points and 340 yards in those games. So if you go to North Carolina then in 2023, the Drake May year, the big year for Chip, a reason why he has the job he has. because he had Drake May's backing. Where was I? There I was. Sorry with a mouse now. I'm not used to flying around as much on my computer screen. It's really fun. Rushing yards, UNC a little bit more than 172 than Mizzou had, but Mizzou did have a top 8 Heisman finalist finisher. Obviously, almost 300 yards a game. They did have Drake May, almost 500 yards of offense, 34 points. So the offense in 23 for North Carolina was better than Mizzou's offense, even though that was a really good Mizzou offense under Kirby Moore. At UNC, they did run a little more tempo than Mizzou has done under Eli. Eli does not tend to run a lot of tempo. I wish they would speed it up a little bit more, especially with the run game they have, but that's just not something that they seem intent on doing anytime in the near future. Unfortunately for my sanity. And then in 2024 at North Carolina, a little bit of a step back. You saw Max Johnson and Jacoby Criswell and a bunch of other guys play quarterback for North Carolina. But they did average more rushing yards, similar passing yards. So they were averaging more on offense, more points, more yards, and it was a more effective offense than the Missouri offense, despite having Luther Burden, Theo Wease, and Brady Cook, who was getting multiple starts in the NFL. Now they did have Amarian Hampton. That helps when you have an NFL running back. Mizzou had an NFL running back this year. They did not last year as we keep going through. And then 2025 at Michigan, rushing. Now the Michigan offense took a big leap this year. If you remember in 2024, the Michigan offense led by Davis Warren was abysmal. It was terrible. They got some much needed boost. They did average 213 rushing yards, which is way less than Mizzou, 185 passing yards, only 399 total yards of offense, 27 points per game, which was less than Mizzou. So Mizzou was better across the board. However, if you read a lot of Michigan sites and a lot of objective Michigan analysis, now there are Michigan fans who are like, I'm kind of glad he's gone. They were not the biggest fans of Chip Lindsey. But there are people who I believe have objective analysis that do say, look, some of it was they were playing Bryce Underwood, a true freshman quarterback who just didn't see it yet. And that comes with the territory of a freshman quarterback. They were basically saying, if you watch the All-22, there are guys running wide open downfield. There are guys running open on crossers and screens, and not screens, on hitch, everything, and Bryce just didn't see it yet. We'll see how much Bryce develops as he gets older and becomes a better quarterback, because he's too talented not to be a good quarterback in college football, whether that's at Michigan or LSU, or he was at LSU or whatever school he ends up at. But bigger than that, I think overall what we're going to see with Chip Lindsey is he's a guy that bounces around a lot. Look, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of this hire. I don't think it's a bad hire. To be perfectly clear, I do not think it's a bad hire in any stretch of the imagination. So don't come away with me thinking that I'm thinking this is a bad hire. I'm just a little, I guess I would say, disappointed by the hire. I thought this would be a chance for Mizzou to really I thought this would be a chance for Mizzou to not change what they've done, because what they've done has been effective, but you haven't beaten a good team in 2 years, not in a bowl game. We'll talk about the bowl game here in a little bit and kind of what I want to see in the bowl game on Saturday. Again, there will be no post game for that. I do have family Christmas stuff to do. But I think the bigger thing here is I thought this would be a chance for Mizzou to evolve their offense, include a little bit more of a passing scheme, a little bit more of a run scheme. And based on what I've read and what I've seen from Chip, it seems like it's going to be a lot more of the same. Now, I could be way off. People will point to that 2023 season at North Carolina, where that team did score a lot of points. I would argue, look, you had Drake May. And as much as I really like Matt Zollers, and we'll talk about the portal quarterbacks here in a little bit, Matt Zollers is not Drake May. Drake May is a fringe MVP candidate at his second year in the NFL. Like, that's not who Matt Zollers is, guys. So, look, we'll wait and see. I think it's always a fun feather in the cap to say you took Michigan's offensive coordinator. Again, I don't think that's means anything. Whoever Michigan hires, it's not going to be Eli. I don't think ultimately that'll matter. I just think we'll see who they hire. To fill out if there's any other hires they got to make for the rest of the staff. Still waiting on that special teams hire. You can't hire Chip Lindsey and still have Eric Link on staff. You just can't do it. I would say my main thoughts on the hire are, and we'll have more thoughts as time goes on. He is working for Mizzou right now. I'm not sure if he's going to do the bowl game, Chip Lindsey. I doubt it. I'm assuming Eli just calls plays for the bowl game. But we'll see how it goes. I would not expect him to be the long-term answer at Mizzou at offensive coordinator, and not because he's going to get fired or anything. It's just that's not who he is. He tends to bounce from job to job to job to job to job. He's not going to be a guy that ever gets a head coaching job opportunity. That's not, no. He tried that at Troy. It failed miserably. But I would not expect at the turn of the decade Chip Lindsey to be your OC. I wouldn't expect in 2 years. It's just not how he works. It's never how he's worked. He's always looking for something different, something bigger, or a better opportunity. I don't think it's the worst hire in the world. I'm a little disappointed. It seems like it's going to be a lot more of the same. But maybe Eli sees that and says that the same is good. We need to see if we just need to execute better, which it could be Eli's philosophy. And while I don't agree, that might just be what it is. All righty. So then we'll get into the transfer portal. Mizzou with another couple of losses. The biggest is that they've retained Ahmad Hardy. He says he is coming back to play in this upcoming season, next season for the Missouri Tigers. He made a comment like, they all know I'm a Mizzou guy, which is awesome. You have a building block there with Hardy. You have a building block with Olubade. We'll talk about receiver here in just a moment. So I do think that skill position wise on offense, you do have some pieces. There's a lot of talk. I know Eli made a huge deal about we don't want to lose Jamal Roberts, and I agree. It would be best if we kept him because then you can really build and you have a nice set there. Olubade, 2 running backs. You have a bunch of tight ends I know the staff really likes. And then we'll figure out quarterback. We'll talk about quarterback more here in just a moment. Also entering the portal is Javion Hilson. That's a loss. Mizzou right now, I don't think Damon Wilson's coming back. There's some talk that he's getting like 3rd-round draft grades. And if that's the case, he may come back for another big season. I just don't see it. If you lose him, you're going to lose Zion Young. You lost Helson. Now you have Darius Smith. I believe Anderson has another year. Hopkins comes back, and Kitchen has another year. That's not enough at D-end. You need a little more oomph. You need a little more explosiveness. You need a little more talent. And not to say those guys can't be good players, but you need talent at those positions. And Hilson was extremely talented. So we'll see what happens there. I like Hopkins. The staff really seems to like him. I just think it's a big loss to lose a nice hustle. To lose a kid like that. Now, there's a lot of talk now, of course, with it's about potential or production over potential. I agree with him on most cases. Line play is a little different. I do think you need to have guys that you can build around on offense and defensive lines. I do wonder if this flips Eli's recruiting strategy a little bit. Hilson was a late flip to the University of Missouri. He was a Florida State, kind of seemed like he was heading to Florida State, and then Miami was looking in there, and then he ultimately did pick Missouri. So best of luck to him. We'll see what happens. The other one is Henry Fanuku, a 4-star offensive lineman. This is the one I'm a little more upset about. I've said now for a year, you have to – I shot Jacob. You have to recruit offensive linemen. Like, offensive linemen are not going to be gifted to you in the portal. Caden Green was gifted to you. That's a very rare thing to see. And now you have Jack Lang, you have Logan Reichert. Again, we'll talk Caden Green. We'll see if he comes back. I'm leaning more towards he is coming back. I think him and Trotter will come back, which helps out a lot. We'll see about Rodriguez. I know a couple other guys that have been talking about maybe going into the portal. But you have a building block there with Green. You have a building block. Peagler's probably going to start again next year. I thought he played better as the season wore on. You have no tackles. Unless Caden Green's going to play tackle again, it didn't go that well. You don't have a center. Is Tristan Wilson ready? Like, you need guys that internally step up and become good players for you. And not, you can't just consistently, like, Keegan Trost was a gift. He was a joy to watch. He was very good at football this year. But that can't be the strategy every year. Is hopefully we hit on these guys in the portal. We'll see what happens. The portal does open January 2nd, so we'll have one more show to talk about more portal needs and more portal entries. As far as quarterbacks, I know Gabe at Power Mizzou talked about the Harvard quarterback is a name to keep an eye on. Not a running threat, it doesn't appear, but a very good passer. And he's a guy I think you can bring in, is very talented, but also won't be super upset if you bring him in and you end up giving Zollers the job. I think it is a guy you'd bring in to compete with Matt for the job next for 2026, and we'll see what happens as we get there. Again, it doesn't know. We have 2 more shows before Mizzou even probably has a chance to sign a quarterback, so we'll get there when we get there. And then Marquise Johnson also left for the portal. I mean, that was always going to happen. Look, after he lost his starting job to Alubade, he was never going to come back to Missouri. He just wasn't. Marquise had maybe one of the biggest program turning moments in that touchdown against Kentucky. Had a huge catch against Kansas State that year as well. He's a good player. He's a very good player when used right, but Mizzou just has not had a deep passing game for 2 years. And he's really struggled at finding anything in the intermediate, finding anything anything besides just running down the field. Best of luck to him. So Mizzou for the bowl game will have a bunch of freshmen and Kevin Coleman. We'll see how it goes. I guess we'll get into the bowl game. Mizzou taking on Virginia on Saturday night. They'll be without Trotter. They'll be without a handful of guys because it's a bowl game. So, a handful of guys are going to sit out. But Virginia is a good team. Virginia went 10-2, won the ACC Coastal. Not Coastal. They won the ACC regular season. They went 7-1. They did end up losing to Duke in the ACC championship game. They are, of course, led by Chandler Morris, who's been around the block. Chandler Morris was the quarterback for TCU in Deion's first game. You remember the circus that was Deion's first game? The quarterback for TCU was Chandler freaking Morris, which is crazy. I haven't seen anything about who's sitting out for Virginia. I don't think anybody notable. It's just we'll see. But the Virginia Cavaliers are led by Chandler Morris and Tony Elliott. Tony Elliott, who was a Clemson offensive coordinator, and the Clemson offense has really struggled since he came over. Chandler Morris, bit of an enigma this year. He did complete 64% of his passes, 2,800 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 9 picks. I think Chandler Morris is more of a game, like, you know what I mean? Like, Chandler Morris is like that gamer moxie quarterback that I really enjoy watching. He's kind of what Pavia was before Pavia really had the big year this year. For Vanderbilt, their backup quarterback, and I believe he transferred, but their backup quarterback was former Mizzou Daniel Kaelin. So that's fun. Their leading rusher, Jamari Taylor, finished with 1,062 yards. What year is Taylor? This was his first. He was a senior. This is his first year. I think College Football Reference is wrong. Anyway, but he had a very nice year. He did rush for 14 touchdowns for a good running attack. Chandler Morris was second in rushing touchdowns with 5. He had a couple against Florida State, if you remember that game. Harrison Whaley is kind of their backup running back. He ran for 5 yards carry and also 5 touchdowns. Receiving-wise, Terrell Harris, 59 catches, 847 yards, 5 touchdowns. Shage Ennis, the tight end, 18 catches, 179 yards, but 5 touchdowns to go with it. So when you get down into the red zone, into that part of the field, he's definitely someone you have to look out for. Defensively, they're led by Daniel Rickard, who had 6.5 sacks. Mitchell Melton also had 5 sacks, and then Jason Prevard led the team with 3 interceptions. Cam Johnson picked off 2 passes. Cam Robinson is a linebacker for them. He did intercept 2 passes here and had 2 interceptions returned for a touchdown, which is awesome. Mitchell Melton led them in tackles for a loss at 10. He is a DN for the Cavaliers. On the season, the Cavaliers were 31st in points per game and 31st in opponents' points per game. Virginia was always an interesting team this year because, look, you got to give them their props because he's you got to give them their props, man. They went 10-2, but they're always a weird enigma this year because if you look at Bill Connolly's SP Plus, which is what I always love to use, they were consistently in the top 20 as the season went along. And as I pull this up, remember they should have beaten NC State. Chandler Morris threw an atrocious pick towards the end of that game. Missouri, for instance, finished 20th in SP Plus, which I think if you watched Mizzou this year, you're like, yeah, sure, that's like the 20th best team in the country. They're not that elite, but they're, Virginia finished 30th. Virginia was pretty consistently hovering between like 32 to 39 all season. So they were a team that definitely, look, they had a horseshoe up their ass. Like it's fun to watch. And it kind of came crashing down. The thing with those kind of teams is when you have the horseshoe, you have to finish because you never know when you're going to have that level of luck. And look, it's an oblong ball. There's going to be a level of luck to the game. But when you look at like some of the scores of these games for Virginia, they beat the crap out of Coastal Carolina. Good for you. And then they played at NC State and they lost by 4. If you remember that week 2 game, week 2 kind of a interesting slate, but around the conference. But you did see that game go back and forth. At halftime, it was 24-14 UVA. And then Hollywood Smothers touchdown, CJ Bailey touchdown, Jamari Taylor, and then Dale, and then Smothers again scores for NC State, and then Virginia goes right back down the field, and Chandler Morris throws his first pick of the game. Taylor that game, by the way, against NC State went for 150 against Hollywood Smothers, who's maybe the best running back in the ACC. Trying to think who I could be missing. But it was they did put up 514 yards of offense, and they just threw a pick in the end zone to lose the game. They beat up on William and Mary. They beat up on Stanford, and then this is where like the horseshoe starts to come in. They played Florida State. Florida State 8th in the country Friday night in Charlottesville. Everyone kind of had their eyes on that game because everyone kind of knew like, oh, Florida State, they got Miami in a week. Like they're off to a great start, and immediately UVA goes up 14-0. They then fall behind 21-14. Florida State ties it in the waning seconds, and then Virginia wins it in overtime. If you look at the yardage, Florida State outgained Virginia 514 to 440. Both teams with 3 turnovers. Some fortunate things had to go their way to win that game. They did hit on some explosives. Big game for Deuce Robinson. I forgot about that. I would like to see Olubade kind of have a big game and a lot of targets, and I think he will with Zollers starting. Then they go to Louisville, and this was their best win of the year, bar none. They go to Louisville. They get a pick six, and again, they get outgained by 150 yards, 383 to 237. They force 2 turnovers, and they make the plays when it mattered, man. It goes to overtime, and Jamari Taylor scores to win the game. So as I'm talking, this is the second overtime game they have played, which is interesting. You don't see that a lot. They play Washington State. Washington State plays hard. New coach Kirby Moore heading to the Palouse, ranked 18th in the country, and they fall down 17-7 at half. They're down 20-10 entering the fourth quarter to Washington State. Washington State finished 6-6. They played the Idaho Potato Bowl against Utah State. Harrison Whaley 2-yard run. They get a field goal, and then they get a safety with 2 minutes left to win the football game. Just an ugly win there. Like Virginia, just like you got to give credit to these wins, but they just keep winning ugly. They go to play North Carolina. Now they're ranked 16th in the country. I definitely wouldn't have had them that high. Again, it goes to overtime, and they win on a North Carolina goes for 2 and is not able to get it. They miss it by an inch. They're outgained by 100 yards against the Tar Heels. Just not a pretty game. As I go back to the Washington State game, I want to see kind of the yardage totals. They were outgained by Washington State, but it was negligible, so it doesn't matter. And then I thought they were going to lose this game. They're 7-1. They go to Cal. Cal's playing some really good football. They get a pick six as Cal is going to change the game. It was one of Cam Robinson's pick sixes. Chandler Morris, 24-36 for 262. A nice game there. They forced 2 picks on the Cal quarterback, the freshman. And they win a football game on the road, 31-21. That gets them to 8-1. Then the loss. They go to They go to Duke, or they play Wake Forest. They get Wake Forest at home. They're just never in the game. They outgained Wake 327-203. Kind of the reverse of what we saw in some of these earlier games. Wake only gave up 200. They gave up 200 yards of offense to Wake, but they still lose. Chandler Morris was knocked out. Daniel Kalen, again, a former Mizzou recruit, and he struggled mightily. 18-28 for 145. Chandler Morris was 3 of 6. They were not able to run the ball effectively. Jamari Taylor, 5.5 yards per carry. I get 327 yards. I guess I shouldn't speak too much. They did limit Robbie Ashford in that passing game pretty remarkably, which is funny to see. But they held them to 64 passing yards. But they do lose that game to Wake, and that kind of ends your at-large dreams if you were going to have any if you were the Virginia. Then they play Duke. They go to Duke on the road, and they smoke them. At one point in the fourth quarter, it was 31-3. So you have to give a lot of credit to that for Virginia. They outgained Duke 540-255. Chandler Morris, 23 of 35 for 2 touchdowns, 316 yards. In the run game, their 2 backs, 34 carries for 195 yards. They were able to just kind of do whatever they wanted in the run game. Terrell Harris, 161 yards. They really limited Darian Mensah. I think is a really talented quarterback. And then the following week, they took care of business against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech had been playing a little bit better down the stretch. They win them there. It was 27-0. They dominated every snap of that game. It was not a competitive football game for either. So, and then they got Duke, and we know what happened there. They lost in overtime on a pick by Chandler Morris, who had 2 that game. And game they were down 10, and then they tie it with 22 seconds left, and then they just lose. So Virginia definitely had a horseshoe up their butts this season. I'm not going to give a prediction on the bowl game. I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be fun. What I want to see is as I've talked about in previous weeks, I want to see Matt Zollers play. I want to see them trust him. And I want to see some big plays. I want to see some elevated passing concepts. There's no reason Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Robertson to carry the ball 40 times. Guys, it's a bowl game. And I need to edit that. What I want to see. Can't type today. There we go. I want to see some big plays in the offense. I want to see this is a Virginia team that has been liable to giving up big plays. You are more physical than them. You are more talented than them. I limit big plays, make big plays, and I think this is a game that Mizzou should win. You're going to be having a lot of your guys, at least defensively or offensively. Not in the receiver room, of course, but then defensively, I think you're going to not have Trotter, so limit big plays. But I think Mizzou is pretty well-rounded at linebacker. I think Newson's going to play. Beasley's going to play. Rodriguez is going to play. Jacobs is going to play. While Trotter is an awesome football player, I just don't think that should matter as much in this kind of bowl game. But, of course, when it does come to bowl games, a lot of it comes down to who's motivated to play, man. Are you motivated to go out there and play 60 hard minutes in Florida in a game that you don't think matters? Or do you think it matters? And Eli teams typically have done a great job of playing hard in these bowl games. 2021, they played Army. They played really hard. It just wasn't a good team, and Brady Cook was making his first real start. 22, you played a Wake team that was just better with Sam Hartman, but you did play hard. It was a tie game or a close game entering the fourth. 23, you did beat Ohio State. It was ugly, but you beat Ohio State. And then last year you beat Iowa, who's always going to play hard. So typically Eli's teams have played hard in these situations, but we'll see. This is another team I would qualify this as a good team, but again, I think Iowa last year is a good team. I just don't know how much stock you put into bowl games. I know a lot of people don't like me saying that, but what is there to take away from a game when half your starters don't play or the rest are transferring? Mizzou at receiver will not have. Mizzou at receiver will be playing a bunch of freshmen and Kevin Cole. And then the Norfleet's not going to play either. So you have all your tight ends there. I hope Mizzou trusts their tight end next year. This Brett Norfleet injury history drives me nuts, but it is what it is. You can't blame the kid for getting hurt. But that's kind of what I think about the bowl game. Chip Lindsey, as far as the playoff and stuff knows, we'll talk more about that next week. I think that is about it. So I got to get to a family thing at 8:15. We're going to go see some lights. So I got to change and go. So before I get off, again, I want to thank Mark. This is the voice of college football. This is the Missouri Tigers channel. So like and subscribe, guys. I'm here every Monday to talk about Mizzou football. I will be back next Monday to talk more. We'll talk about the bowl game. I will watch it. I just can't do a post game. I have a Christmas thing. I will watch it, and then we will do a show on Monday about the game and then kind of what we want to see in the portal. Follow Mark at the Voice of College Football. And follow me at PsychoZ50. We do have merch. I've posted it in the description. Thank you guys all for tuning in, man, this holiday season. So I think enjoy this basketball game. The fact how unathletic Mizzou looks in year 4 of Dennis Gates is utterly ridiculous. Or year 4. This is ridiculous. I hope you guys all have a wonderful holiday season. Enjoy your football, college, NFL, whatever your life may be. I didn't get into the playoff too much. Well, we can talk more about the playoff next week. When I don't have 100 places to run. So thank you guys for being here. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I will talk to you next Monday. Go Tigers. Happy holidays, and MIZ.